Test, test. Okay, good. Alright, got that fixed. Had to slay a gremlin early in the morning, already took one out. As Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms auto hoax. The great mind that brought you dinosaurs in space. You can find that on Spotify. Alright, it is pretty much 9:11 a.m., 11/14/2022. Shout out to PewDiePie. I had this energy drink that had PewDiePie on the side. I think it's called G Fuel or something, and like my hands are shaking. I'm up early running errands, and I figure I got time to go over something here. I put out a press release, and I put George News on blast, and it should get interesting. Let me go ahead and start with this, because I wanted to have this separate from what we talk about later today when we take calls. And what this is, it's a little bit of, I guess you could call it intrigue. What we're talking about is just inside baseball with the channel. But the long and short of it is the individual behind George News is one of the major stalkers and suppressors of this channel. He's purchased hundreds of things like domain names to steer traffic away from this channel. And anyway, the shenanigans go on. But interestingly enough, he's been operating as George News, and now he has a competition. There's another George News imitator, both of them pretending to be JFK back from the dead. They're getting more coverage, and I put out a press release today because I have evidence this person actually confesses to cyber squatting and identity theft, and I'm putting it on blast. If anybody has any questions about it, go to timosmond.blog, and you can actually read the evidence against this person who has worked for 4 years now to suppress this channel. All right, let's go through some headlines here. Alec Baldwin files lawsuit in Rust shooting, accuses crew of negligence, seeking to clear his name. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't do that at the very beginning. Now that the production is under the guidance of her father, Helena Hutchinson's father. Again, he shot Helena Hutchins 42 with the 44. And then he shot Joel Souza, who happens to have Donald Trump's birthday. And this is the movie set out there in Santa Fe. Alec Baldwin filed a cross complaint on Friday that puts the blame on Helena Hutchins' death on 3 crew members and the ammunition supplier for the Rust set. Does anybody here believe that this is real? That Helena Hutchins wasn't created on thispersondoesnotexist.com? Just seems like drama. But it neatly and conveniently brought a number of elements into the world stage picture. When we look at the Metascript view, it brings in Hunt for Red October, the nuclear sub, because of course Baldwin plays in that. Helena Hutchins is from the place where the book takes place, a Tom Clancy. And we're living through a few Tom Clancy novels concurrently right now. Let me catch up on some comments as well. If you didn't know also, Lloyd Miller, one of our Discord members, was banned. Not just banned from our server, but he had his own server deleted and he can't open a new account, and he tried. We even gave him a sock puppet and he's blocked. He was known for anti-5G, anti-vax and other stuff, but we tolerate all perspectives. But he's not gone, and if you want to find him, Lloyd Miller is now on Substack. And of course, Substack is one of the platforms where I also pretty much republish everything that you hear here. Anything you read on any of my blogs, it goes to Substack. timosmond.blog. In fact, let me go over my Substack article. This is the one from today that really puts everything with this George News thing into a one-pager, so it all makes sense to anybody who's new to this. And I think this is significant, and you'll understand why. JFK Jr.'s magazine, George, rises from the dead for the second time. Although JFK Jr. may not have risen from the dead yet, although his father might on the 22nd, since he failed to materialize last year, to the disappointment of the cultists gathered at Dealey Plaza, his magazine has, and that's twice. First, it surfaced in 2018 as George News. And if you go to their site, george.news, you'll note it has the same slogan as JFK Jr.'s magazine, George, which is not just politics as usual. It's beyond just taking a name. This is actually taking on everything about it, all of the trappings. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This one appeared in 2018 and it grew to be among the top QAnon influencers in 2019 leading up to the 2020 election. And in 2020, many and beyond, many QAnoners started taking their Q drops from George News, who would drop things in the chats, little bits, chicken feed for the NPC truthers, as Les Luthor refers to them. Now, George News would pretend to be hanging out with JFK Jr. They even bought jfkjr.live. They bought the domain. The CEO, Marcus Goldfinch, is friends with Ron Watkins, CodeMonkey Z. He's connected. In fact, he's known to the White House travel office, and he travels with the president, Donald J. Trump. But there's a lot of LARPing going on here, whatever you think about it. And he has led his 250K followers on Telegram to believe that he is rubbing elbows with JFK Jr. right there as he posts on Telegram, and they all believe it. But they have reasons to believe it, and he provides those reasons, and I can demonstrate this. But now, a few months ago, George Online appeared, and this is the second incarnation, or second reincarnation. The first would be George, the second was George News. This would actually be the third then, George Online. This is, again, spearheaded by Eugene Ho. Eugene Ho, if you're not familiar, he was the personal photographer for Donald Trump for 2016. And then he became the personal photographer for Donald Trump Jr. So he goes around taking pictures of the Trumps. Gene Ho is a drinker of the Kool-Aid. He's been known to sell JFK Jr. merchandise, as in flags that say Trump, JFK Jr. 2020. He was huge. In fact, he ran for mayor somewhere in Florida, I believe, and he was hinting that JFK Jr. was going to come back from the dead. Again, JFK Jr. died 7/16. Was it 99? I mean, this was the same date that the Eyes Wide Shut movie came out, 7/16. The same date that the Saturn rocket for Apollo 11 launched from Kennedy Space Center. There's some interesting connections when you look at the Kubrick-Kennedy connections. In fact, side note here, but there you can make a pretty good case that Eyes Wide Shut may also contain a bit of a subtext, a storyline, where it's actually about JFK Jr. We may get into that later on tonight if anyone is interested. I mean, look, this is going to be the week on the 22nd. I'm pretty sure JFK is going to come back from the dead, and there's going to be a bunch of QAnoners hanging out at Dealey Plaza like they did last year. Why wouldn't they do it this year? Last year they were out there drinking bleach with their Kool-Aid. Now again, Eugene Ho and Goldfinch are both running George magazines. One is George News, one is George Online. And they pretend not to know one another because presumably, I guess they're competing. And they're competing for ownership over something that neither one of them have a proper claim to. Here's a cover of George Online. It's Donald Trump in a tricorn hat, and he's got a Q lapel pin, and he has a lantern that has 17 on it. They don't even try to conceal it. Gene Ho is not only not hiding the Q connection, but he's not attempting to be anonymous. He's made George Magazine into a Q thing. He has cemented the JFK Jr. Q connection that I've been talking about for a couple of years now. I spoke with Mike Rothschild, who wrote Q, The Coming Storm. During an interview before his book came out, I asked him, I said, hey, do you think this JFK Jr. thing is anything? And he said, nah, you can ignore it. He was wrong. And this is definitely making this connection, as Goldfinch has. Continuing. Now, we're looking at two different versions of the same magazine, and neither one of them are particularly connected to the original in any way, unless one of them knows JFK Jr. Do these guys know each other? They pretend not to. Not only that, but Gene Ho doesn't talk to media. Marcus Goldfinch, meanwhile, is hiding his identity as best he can for a few reasons. One, he's an unindicted 1/6 co-conspirator. He's a major January 6th instigator, a promoter of election fraud claims. His YouTube channel MGTV, is the one that put David Hogg on blast as a crisis actor. Look it up. MGTV, Marcus Goldfinch TV. And three, he stole copyrights to Infinite Plane Radio. That's my connection to this. He stole copyrights to Infinite Plane Radio podcast by contacting YouTube Legal, and I have the emails. I obtained this stuff. And he pretended to be me. He said that my voice was his. And he used that to flag my channel and take it down. Why do you think this is YouTube channel number 150 that you're listening on? How many people do you know have been banned 150 plus times from any platform? I don't even swear. Now, to continue, I just think he's hiding for that reason. And my objective here is by putting this on blast, I put out a press release actually showing the evidence about his theft of my content. I'm hoping to shine a bright light on Goldfinch, and that's why I'm making it a point to record this morning. And I think it's somewhat boring. I've been dealing with this for a few years, and I just want to get this out of the way so later we can just move on to some other more pertinent things, like the billionaire crypto kingpins showing up dead everywhere. Lots of interesting things happening. Kanye West blaming the Illuminati for the death of his mother, claiming that he's one of the few big celebrities not compromised by having killed someone or something. Very strange times. Okay, now Mother Jones. Magazine Mother Jones did an interview with the original George Magazine staffer Lisa DiPaolo, who said, "Oh God, that is awful. This is so offensive. It makes me sick as a former member of George to see something like this." Yeah, the original George people who worked with JFK Jr. think this is disgusting. Now, who really owns it? Will Gene Ho and Marcus Goldfinch bump heads with the Kennedys over copyrights? I will cover this story as it unfolds, and if you share it, it will help shine a bright light on Marcus Goldfinch and his cybercrimes. Again, we're talking fourth-degree felony, somebody connected to Trump. I'm hoping that one of the enemies of the Trump side seize on this and use it as a battering ram, as a cudgel, to go after the Trumps. Now, I'm not Trump deranged, I'm not political, but I can see that as being an angle to bring Goldfinch to the surface. All right, let me see who's here in chat. We are joined by Salty Siren, Connor G, Benton, Dinah South, Sun Rabbit, Travis Cloud, Phil LeBlanc. Thanks for the support. Thirst for Truth. All right, looks like we have a good number. I sent out text message notifications. I put out a second article yesterday. This was called Space Junk Gives Me Eco-Anxiety. And I pointed this out before. It's F the whales. Nobody cares about the ocean because now the current thing is space environmentalism. And NASA is the least concerned with the state of the ocean. And they're the leading polluter of outer space. And on 3/11/2021, NASA dropped nearly 3 tons of used batteries into orbit, where over the next few years, and it's been about a year now, it's either all going to burn up or it's just going to fall. We're talking 3 tons of used batteries falling on the heads of dolphins, whales, raining down upon villagers on remote undiscovered islands. And I'm wondering, why didn't it occur to these rocket scientists to jettison the waste in the direction of outer space, as in up? And then you have Elon Musk, billionaire, Bezos, billionaire, talking about mining asteroids, which will turn them into trillionaire climate change accelerationists. Now, these are just things to look forward to in the future if you believe in outer space. They're amplifying these threats. Space environmentalism is a thing. But there's a lot of hypocrisy here. The people who suddenly care about space environmentalism and regulating the billionaires with their rockets, I don't think any of them, and this includes you too, I don't think anybody here put their masks into red biohazard containers for proper disposal. We're talking about bloodborne pathogens, we're talking about infectious waste. None of you put your masks in red biohazard bins, and you can rest assured that they all ended up in the ocean. A lot of them likely wrapped around sea turtles like ill-fitted swimsuits, or added to the shorelines of hideous PPE islands, and there are many. There were studies that found 57 million pounds of PPE and related plastic waste have polluted the oceans since the 2020 pandemic. It's enough to raise the ocean levels by at least a millimeter. Just pointing out the hypocrisy of the climate cultists who are turning their attentions up. And most of them here on the ground are just straight communists now. They're not even hiding it. You have the religious aspect of it, where they have come up with these like 10 commandments of climate change. That's one aspect of it, the religious side. But now you have Greta coming out saying, screw the weather. Let's overthrow the West. Overthrow the West. And this is something I pointed out. This is part of the zeitgeist. As Kanye West world burns, Kanye West's world is burning. The West is burning. As in global warming, we're destroying the world, and I think we're about to get the nuke. Speaking of Kanye West, let me go ahead and play this clip. He only talks to paparazzi. Like, if you want to get an interview with him, you can't be with the major network. You just got to run up on him, apparently, if you want to believe these aren't staged. But here's a couple of things. One, he's talking about how his trainer turned out to be Canadian intelligence. Like, this is actually quite believable and plausible. I was open to the possibility that Kanye's in his own Truman Show, like he suggested when he was talking to Tucker Carlson, that he felt like he was in the Truman Show. He recognized the echo chamber, the immersive illusion. And I think some of these celebrities, if they're not totally controlled, if they're born into it, they could just be a bunch of Trumans. But listen to this. He's talking about how his handler, his trainer, was Canadian intel and was attempting to coerce him to making an apology over his White Lives Matter thing, or he could be institutionalized. Britney Spears.
Let me read this article. This is how this is a trainer, but come to find out, he's actually Canadian intelligence, but this is my trainer. So this shows you the kind of handlers that are around the superstars of California, right? So it says, I'm going to help you one of a couple ways. First, you and I sit down and have a loving and open conversation, but you don't use cuss words. And everything that is discussed is based in fact, and that's some crazy stuff that dumb friend of yours told you, or you saw in a tweet. Second option, I have you institutionalized again, where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Play date with the kids just won't be the same. This is the way a Hollywood trainer was talking to me to force me to go and apologize, right? But even though
threatening him with zombification, with ruining his family. This is pretty severe stuff. And then you add on to it the conspiratorial stuff, which I see a lot of blowback, and this is also intriguing to me from this idea that he's in some kind of a Truman Show situation. You have Saturday Night Live specifically addressing him. SNL, Dave Chappelle, basically addressing him, trying to do maybe soften the blow or damage control. But I mean, how absurd of an experience must that be to turn on the television and whoever's on the screen is just talking to you, more or less, telling you what to do, how to behave. Now here is Kanye West talking about how his mother was sacrificed, and this is really strange stuff because he suggests that many other celebrities are compromised and not free because they've done things.
But that's how they try to categorize.
They can't control me. You get what I'm saying? They can control Shaq. They can control Charles Barkley. They can control LeBron James. They can control Jay-Z and Beyonce.
But not you, man.
But they can't control me. You see, it ain't no name I won't name. Exactly. It's up.
Not you.
You know what I'm saying? And just for Minister Farrakhan, I love you, but the way you read that, I took that as a slight. You know what I'm saying? I'm taking no disrespect from nobody. So let's get on the phone. Let's talk that out.
Now again, this is Kanye West speaking to paparazzi.
I'm taking no slice from nobody.
And here's where he talks about why he's not compromised. Everyone else is. But he specifically says, quote, "My mom ain't here. My mama was sacrificed."
I ain't taking no slice from nobody. It's God. That's the only person that I serve. My mom ain't here. My mama was sacrificed.
Me too.
You understand?
Yeah. I'm appreciative.
Michael Jordan. What about him? His daddy, right? Bill Cosby, his son, right? Dr. Dre, his son. You know, out in Hollywood, a lot of people come up missing. Feels like it might be a lot of that in order to control, traumatize. They want to monetize and traumatize.
And he's talking about the celebrities being handled by trauma, by witnessing members of the cult being killed. This sounds like it sounds like again, like in comments here, dog and pony show for the dumb masses. Right, this is just a continuation of the Kardashians. Donald Trump's just a continuation of The Apprentice. Like at some point, I can recognize that the entertainment and the political news, world news, they're all the same. They've blended fiction and reality. And I think what we're looking at here, though, is something, maybe it's analogous to there's a few situations I see here, and I've talked about the Helter Skelter 2022 storyline here connected with Kanye. And I may visit that mind map if anybody is interested in it. But this does have all the hallmarks of being a scripted drama. And it looks like it's not, because you're hearing him ranting to paparazzi. And this is meant to give it some kind of credibility, I think. I mean, really, that's a huge claim to say his mother was sacrificed. I mean, couldn't you just find out who the doctor was? Investigate them, charge them with murder? I mean, that's a pretty big claim. But we'll see.
And God loved me. You understand? They hit me. Gap, Adidas, all that away. Still, Forbes, who hate me, right, had to write net worth 400 million. Jesus is king. God loved me.
That's more important than keeping the Bible.
That's the thing.
All right, well, make of that what you will. I'm still looking into it. The other day we talked about Madonna drinking water out of a dog bowl. It was an Iggy Pop video she made. It wasn't bad. It wasn't as bad as it sounds. But it wasn't like anything other than a few photos and a slideshow. But someone had hit me up, the Juice, he said he talked to Madonna's former bodyguard, just since we're on the topic of these celebrities. Apparently she has a mask she wears when she's on camera. And I thought of this before. I'm like, we see all these masks, these hyper-realistic masks, and why wouldn't someone just wear a mask of a younger version of themselves whenever they're out in public? It'd be a lot less painful than surgery. Wrong House says, who's your God, yay? I thought he was, isn't he? I mean, this is interesting, this thing that's unfolding, but it's part of a bigger story, and I believe it ties into this Charles Manson scenario of Helter Skelter. And we'll go into the details here, but it's definitely there. A lot of intriguing things. Like, look at this. Ron DeSantis and Adam Walsh. The America's Most Wanted, the kid that was supposedly killed by, was it Henry Lee Lucas and Otis O'Toole? Anyway, there are people who think that, yes, Adam Walsh, and let me give you some background on him, is not dead. Adam Walsh was an American child who was abducted at a Sears department store at the Hollywood Mall, Hollywood, Florida, July 27th, 1981. Then many of you know the television host John Walsh and America's Most Wanted. Well, internet investigators have found that it's kind of uncanny, the resemblance between DeSantis and Adam Walsh. I mean, kind of a macabre thing. But we live in a world where Kate Perry's, in all likelihood, JonBenet Ramsey. Like, these are all just child stars, but their first gig was kind of a tragedy, and now they're just grown up. And you can't say DeSantis isn't an actor. You've seen the hand gestures where he imitates Trump. The way Trump writes, the way Trump signs, the accordion gesture. That is an actor. They're modeling their very movements, their gesticulations off somebody else. It's an actor. Salty Siren says that's him. I think so. Cubstar says the plastic surgeon Kanye West's mom used was investigated because he has malpractice settlements and alcohol convictions. Interesting. They could have, I mean, it's one of these things. You have like these, who was that actress who had some kind of routine operation and then she died while being intubated? It was that, the comedian. I mean, I don't really care for many of these celebrities. I'm not celebrity obsessed. I'm talking about Kanye West quite a lot lately. But, I am not at all enthralled by any of them. But the idea that they are in some kind of a cult and there's some kind of a system that keeps them all in line, yeah, I think that's a fair claim. Yeah, Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers is the one. She said something about Michael, and the next day she's dead on the table. And I was disappointed because, I mean, she was kind of being funny at the time. She was on Team Trump. She was being trolly, and I was expecting some entertainment. And the main reason I don't think DeSantis can beat Trump, though, is that he's not as entertaining. Okay, let's see. Wee says, I think he's exposing what's really going on, dude. He may be. I would say that Kim would be an insider. You know, Kim Kardashian connected to the O.J. Simpson thing. Dating Pete Davidson, whose dad died at 33 in one of the towers on 9/11. Like, that's not a strange coincidence. Diana South says Joan was sacrificed on Beyonce's 33rd birthday. Now that's a coincidence. But then how much of that is just theater? Because I'm pretty sure Joan Rivers has been spotted since. Now these masks, I'm up to the point where I can accept that it's likely some celebrities are deep faking it with their own faces. Like, there's this conspiracy theory that Benicio del Toro doesn't exist, that it's Brad Pitt in a costume, in a mask, and I think it fits. Mark Wahlberg wakes up at 3:30 a.m. Just a random article. No reason to highlight waking up at 3:30. The whole news thing, if you look at it, it's all occultic, encoded. That's why I see something like this, DeSantis and Adam Walsh, and it doesn't even raise an eyebrow.
Person that I
Let's see here. We talked about Kanye West, of course, and is he being handled? A few people are of the opinion, I should do a poll. Is Kanye Truman breaking free? Now, here's another thing, too. He's talking about how he's the one who's, unchained. Unlike everyone else, he is not compromised in the same way. Kanye even said, and this was recently, he said that he's the one who came up with the storyline for Django Unchained, the Quentin Tarantino film. He said it was stolen from him. And there are a few reasons why I think that this is, again, I think it's scripted to look like he's going off on his own, going rogue. But the more I look at the backstory, the more I think this is totally planned. Let me bring up Helter Skelter 2022. Wronghouse says he's telling 90% of the truth, that equals 100% lie. Well, you can give him some, if you want, benefit of the doubt. But his involvement in that ritual to Hades on 222, I'm sorry, but that was like one of the cerniest rituals I've seen outside of the Gothard Tunnel. Okay, Helter Skelter 2022. Here he is hanging out with Candace Owens, 33. Nothing to see here. With the White Lives Matter, creating this entire drama, inciting it. They lit the fuse. This is when he announces he's buying Parler, owned by her husband. This kind of gets the thing rolling. But the connections I wanted to bring up is, back in February, when he was at that event, hanging out with Marilyn Manson, they did a song called Jail. And this is the second song they've done together. The first one was Black Skinhead. Both of these are relevant right now. Black Skinhead and Jail. Now, the Jail song with Marilyn Manson, I think really brings into the forefront the Charles Manson narrative of Helter Skelter. And Helter Skelter was this idea that came from the White Album and the song Revolution 9, which has machine guns and pigs squealing and people screaming. That song, and then chanting in the background, "Rise, rise, rise," communicated to the prophet Charles Manson that the oppressed blacks would rise up in America against the establishment, and that the pigs were the cops being killed. This was the Helter Skelter story. The killings that that Charles Manson committed by Satanist and witch Susan Atkins, killing Sharon Tate and the others, that was blamed on the Black Panthers. It was a psyop with the false flag attached, rather. It was meant to incite a response. That was meant to be, it even said on the wall, "Die pigs." Well, the pigs wasn't referring to rich people in Hollywood. It was a reference to cops. Anyway, it's interesting because that's, again, Black Panthers, and Kanye West's father is a Black Panther. And the Black Panthers today would be represented by BLM. Now, here's where Django Unchained gets into the story. This idea of Helter Skelter is the same story as Turner Diaries. Turner Diaries is the book that it's written like a journal. It's in the future, and it has to do with this idea of a big race war thing and white nationalists nuking everybody else. Turner Diaries was the inspiration for Timothy McVeigh, who was executed on 6/11/2001 at the age of 33. Timothy McVeigh is sort of the OBL of white nationalism, the Osama bin Laden of white nationalism. That's why his death, 6/11, you flip it upside down, 9/11, it's an inversion, domestic terror and then external alien terrorist threat that comes in from the outside. Turner Diaries is actually a reference to Nat Turner, slave rebellion inspired by the Haitian slave revolt. Nat Turner is the inspiration for Django Unchained, which was Kanye West's idea. Django Unchained, if you've seen the movie, Tarantino film, violent, but that movie came out at the same time that Christopher Dorner was on a killing spree in California, protesting systemic racism at the police department he worked at. And think about these themes. So he runs on this killing spree, and then Mark Lamont on TV is like, wow, he's a superhero. It's like Django Unchained. Yeah, he's commenting on a live killing spree by a black cop taking revenge, and he says he's a superhero. Well, Christopher Dorner hid in a cabin. And hey, pop quiz, how old is Christopher Dorner? And they immolated him. They burned him. They torched the place. There was nothing left but a passport. Yes, he was 33. Now, think about this. He's 33. The Inferno, that's the Phoenix Connection. Just like Pete Davidson's dad, 33 Phoenix Connection. At the Dawn Day 1 event, Kanye West did what? He walks out of the burning house. And now I want to refer back to this meme, the West is a burning house. He said, Dawn Day is about running back into the burning house. That's Kanye West via Instagram. That's a reference to Dr. Martin Luther King. I fear we're integrating into a burning house. The West, of course, being the burning house. Westworld burns, like Greta says, the West needs to be overthrown. And we're seeing the burning down of Kanye West as this is going on. It's all concurrent. And I think that this mind map here goes over the connections between the helter-skelter Turner Diary narrative, Kanye West, and the apocalypse, or the end of this age. And that's what Helter Skelter is ultimately about. And I think Manson, the name Manson is super significant as well because, of course, I think it refers to Aquarius, man's sun. It's an astrological reference as we enter the new house. Every astrological age is a house, and the old house has to be burned down as we go into the new one. I think this is all storyline. Like, so is he running around rogue, and is he going to go free? Or is this all a psyop, or is it a mix of both? Could he be like Truman, led around? That remains to be seen. I'm open to the possibility. All right, I have to cut it short, but I just like to do these recaps in the morning, and I thought I would invite everyone here just to let everybody know we're back on 24/7. I'm building up the playlist. There's always work to be done, but I appreciate the support, everyone who comments and calls, and of course, everyone in Discord. Keeping the think tank running, and of course we are pretty much growing from our ground zero as I imagine we would. We have more than 200 people in the Omni chat. If you want to join the chat, go to ips.monster. And although we have been getting kicked off of all these podcasting platforms, I have managed to repair all of those connections with redundancies. Anyway, thanks for joining. I'm going to go back to the 24/7 live stream and sign up for the newsletter. We'll be back on later tonight, and you'll get the archives sent directly to your inbox. right, good morning, everyone. It's Halloween 2022. This is the Masquerade JT33 featuring Symbia. If you don't have costumes, you kind of don't need them. We've been branded by the mass media. We are now disaster trolls, and that's what we are year-round. Disaster trolls are people who question official mainstream